You directed Zac Efron in Hairspray.
Zach's first audition for Hairspray wasn't great. I went back to New Line and I was like, he doesn't feel right for me. My sister, who was one of the producers of that movie, called me. She's like, you figure it out and make it work because that kid's going to be huge. So we called Zach back in, and during his audition, I said, oh, I know what it is. Just stop smiling. I just want to feel a little bit of mystery. And he did it again. And I said, can you make it a little sexier? And then I was like, oh, no problem. I love it. And New Line was still not convinced, but the bigger star that New Line really wanted in the movie was Amanda Bynes, who had done a good audition, but I was still looking at other pennies. And they said, if you cast Amanda, we'll give you Zach. That's how they both ended up in the movie. I guess I really haven't talked about this, but
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Obsessed the Podcast. I'm Kevin Fallon, here to guide you through all the TV shows, movies, and pop culture nonsense that we think is unmissable. And today's guest is one of my favorite people in show business. It is the director, choreographer, producer, dancer, man of every hat, Adam Shankman. He directed iconic movies like Hairspray, Rock of Ages, A Walk to Remember. He's produced the Oscars. He was a judge on So You Can Dance and a judge of RuPaul's Drag Race. And now he's directing what may be, in the highest praise possible, stupidest comedy of the spring. It's called Stop That Train, starring RuPaul. It's so funny. It's so silly. You're going to want to check it out. And you're going to want to hear my conversation with Adam Shankman. We talk about that. We talk about all of his iconic movies. We talk about Hairspray and Zac Efron and John Travolta and Tom Cruise and Rock of Ages. We go through it all. So here it is, my interview with Adam Shankman. Hello, Adam. How are you?
I'm good, Kevin. Nice to see you, man.
You too. I'm a fan of your movies. I'm a fan of your choreography. I'm a fan of your judging on So You Can Dance. I'm just a huge fan, so I'm very happy to do this.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I'm very actually happy to be here.
And we're talking because your new movie that you directed is coming out, called Stop That Train, or as I like to refer to it, Gay Airplane.
Okay. Okay.
I feel like the comedy is very similar to that.
I take that. I take that as a high compliment, high praise. Like any comparisons that are going to be made to, that movie, I'll take.
Yeah. I mean, it really is that kind of just like really smart humor that it has to be smart in order for the jokes to be dumb, if that makes any sense.
I like to think so.
Yeah, like it's that kind of writing that I love.
I mean, there's only a few like mini thinkers in there, and there was a couple times when I was like encouraged to take them out, and I was like, no, I'm okay if people don't get it right away. Like, I'm fine. But it's pretty just like unapologetically straight down the middle, stupid as fuck. I'm sorry, can I say that on here?
Oh yeah. Oh yes.
Okay.
Please do. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we're talking about Stop That Train. I think we can be a little colorful with our language.
There's that.
So this is a film. It's RuPaul plays one of the main characters. RuPaul is playing the president of the United States. RuPaul is a fantastic actor.
I know, right? I am so proud of Ru in this movie. We had so much fun. I mean, to say that we were like racing, we did this thing so fast. I shot the movie in 19 days. And so each scene, each thing, I mean, we were shooting like a TV show, like 9.5 pages a day. Like it was crazy. And so everything required a lot of trust and a lot of like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. We got to go. And if it doesn't work, we still have to move on. And you know what I mean? There was not a lot of time to think about it. Like I had to just go like, I think this is all going to work out this way. And Ru just completely gave over to it. And I could really see her enjoying it, and it was a great time, and she's really funny in the movie.
Yeah, and you said how fast you shot this. I think that's remarkable, especially considering this is not a small cast. There's like 100 people in this movie that we all recognize and know.
there was a lot of people, and like those people were in and out. I think the fastest one in and out was they were like Paul Scheer and Joel McHale were there for probably a half hour each. But all the other people were there for pretty much half a day. Sarah Michelle Gellar was half a day. Jesse Tyler Ferguson was there for probably 2 hours. I think that it was like, or maybe a little bit longer, but not much. And we would just have to like the weird Jenga of it all, because like going like, well, where are they sitting on the train? And that because the train was only one rectangle, like that. The whole train is just one small rectangle, and we just kept redressing it and making it look like there's a lot of train there. And so it was very kind of DIY and funky, and everybody was just kind of down to clown.
Wow. I love the idea that you had Joel McHale for 30 minutes, and in those 30 minutes, you got him shirtless with a harness on.
There was a choice, like, okay, so I'm gonna be perfectly honest. Like the Joel McHale and Paul Scheer of it were both things like that happened in a day, because when we were shooting that upfront commercial for the Glamazonian Railway, I turned to everybody. I was like, if we don't have some dudes in the front of this movie, there's not going to be anybody but like drag queens for the first almost 10 minutes of the movie, which isn't really what the movie is. And so, and I'm talking like the day before we shot it.
Oh, wow.
And I said to Connor and Christina, who wrote the script, I was like, can you write me two little segments for the commercial? And we're going to just get on the phone and try to find some guys to come down and be a part of this. So I called Joel, and Randy called Paul, Randy Barbato, one of the producers,
Hmm.
and they just said yes. And the call was, can you be here tomorrow?
Oh, wow.
And what am I doing? And I was like, you're going to have like two lines, and you're just sitting in a chair, and it's this thing, and this is what it is. And he was like, it sounds really fun. Sure. Oh yeah. I was like, I swear to God, Joel, you're going to be here for, I swear to God, an hour. He was like, yeah, right. This isn't my first rodeo. He was like, oh my God, you weren't lying. But when he got in, I said, here's your choice. You're either going to be wearing like this, or there's the harness. And he just sort of looked at me, he was like, well, let's just go for the harness. And I was like, that's my guy. Thank you.
It was a sight that I didn't know that I needed to see, but I'm very glad that I saw it.
It was really funny when we were doing. I couldn't believe he was just sitting there, and that I kept going like, "Oh my God, what am I doing?"
Let's face it, after a night of drinks, it can be hard to bounce back, but that's where Z-Biotic's pre-alcohol probiotic drink comes in. It's a genetically engineered probiotic invented by PhD scientists. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct, more than dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. Z-Biotic's pre-alcohol probiotic drink produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel like yourself the next day. Don't let a rough morning after keep you on the sidelines. Drink pre-alcohol to stay ahead of it and make the most of every weekend this month. Go to zbiotics.com/OTP to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use OTP at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/OTP and use the code OTP at checkout for 15% off. And I mean, we've mentioned Joel McHale and Paul Scheer and Jesse Tyler Ferguson. There's also Nicole Richie and Lisa Rinna and June Diane Raphael and Sarah Michelle Gellar. How was wrangling all these people to be on this? Like, were they easy asks, hard asks?
Some were easier, some were harder. Like, I mean, like the Rachel Bloom of it. Like, I didn't know, because that character had to shoot for several days, and there's so much that happens in the train control headquarters, whatever, and we were just like kind of, especially knowing, uh, like our resources were very limited. Let's just put it that way, and like who's going to be up for doing this and all of that. And there was a list of names, and I went to an improv show and at UCB, and Rachel was doing part of this improv show. And I was like, "Oh my god, Rachel's so good." And I've known Rachel for years, but I hadn't thought of her for this, and I saw that show, and I went back and I was like, "Guys, can we just offer this to Rachel Bloom? It would be freaking amazing." So, everybody said yes, and we talked to her, and she said yes to do it, and to me, she's kind of the glue of the movie in a weird way, and, um so that's kinda how that worked. But, like, I had, like, 2 weeks on the ground to put the movie together. Like, we had, like, 2 weeks before that and maybe a couple extra just in talking about how stuff was gonna get done. But I had just finished making an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie called Man with the Bag.
Where he's Santa Claus, right?
He's Santa Claus in that,
Yeah.
yeah. And I literally put pencils down, got on a plane the next day, and was shooting 2 weeks later, this movie. So, it was wild. It was wild. But, yeah, I mean, wrangling everybody was the hardest part about it was just scheduling, like, who could cut but since it was so everybody coming in was so quick, you know? Sarah Michelle was, that was a little harder asked just because, like, instead of just being that one day where she's just shooting her stuff inside the train, I also needed her on the outside of, Union Station for that one little piece, and she was just super cool about it, so
Well, Wikipedia told me this morning that you officiated her wedding to Freddie Prinze Jr.
I did.
So I would imagine she kind of owes you.
Well, the marriage is still strong, so I'm feeling, like, good. I'm, like, 1 for 1, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that must have been an amazing thing to do. I've done it a few times, but not for the person who played Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, when Sarah and Freddie asked me to do it, I quit. In fact, I think it just recently, yes, just very recently at Freddie's birthday this year, I finally asked him, I was like, "Why did you guys ask me to do it? Why?" And he told me, and I was like, "Oh, that makes sense." But even still then, not really. But I had never known. I never knew why I mean, I knew both of them. Like, I knew both of them. I had become friendly with Sarah Michelle while she was on Buffy. And then I ended up choreographing the Once More with Feeling episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. And um, we were just like chill friends. And Freddie, I have a much longer history with, but I'd also been the choreographer and She's All That, which my sister produced. And his like his godfather was my dad's partner in business, and it's there's a lot of history there as well. And so I was sort of close to both of them, and then when they asked me, I was like, "All right, sure. Are you sure?"
It's like something nice to have done to be able to tell people, "Oh, yeah, like I officiated the healthiest, nicest marriage in Hollywood."
That is a great source of pride for me. What's funny is I always Uh, I've done some things that are very strange in my life and career that don't make a lot of sense to me, and that's one of them. But like just the whole notion of being able to like go on and get ordained online for $20 and being able to legally marry people is really crazy. But I'm thrilled that I got to do it.
I'm a proud ordained minister of the Universal Life Church, thanks to the
You and
internet.
I share that. You and I share that.
We're brothers, as they would say. Um, I because I've seen you over the years on Drag Race. You know, you've choreographed some of the Rusicals. You've been a judge on there, and now you've directed RuPaul in this film. When did you first meet RuPaul? Like, what's your relationship with him?
I met RuPaul in 1994. I was choreographing. There used to be these huge AIDS benefits called Commitment to Life that Jeffrey Katzenberg and Barry Diller and Dave Geffen used to produce. And it was at the height of the AIDS crisis, and it was Hollywood's kind of biggest fundraising event for HIV/AIDS. And in 1994, I was choreographing the whole show, but it was one of those shows where bunch of different artists were coming in, and I would choreograph all their numbers. And so you'd get like one day with each one for this charity show. And the opening of that particular year was RuPaul, who is newly famous off of Supermodel, cover girl, and he came in. And by the way, one of his backup dancers was Jamal Sims, which is where I met Jamal initially. And so that's when I first met RuPaul. And then we would see each other a little bit through the years, and it was like very social. And then I don't remember what happened when we kind of reconnected and started to become like more friends. And but then, I ended up directing an episode of AJ and the Queen, and Michael Patrick King asked me to do that. And I was on my way to go shoot the movie Disenchanted, and I had that week and a half available. And so I said, sure, to Michael, and we did that. And then also after Disenchanted, I had never seen Drag Race before. And it was, you know, sort of in the middle of intense COVID, the second go round of lockdown. And I just put on Drag Race for fun. And from episode one, and in 3 weeks, I'd watched every episode of every season in every iteration of every part of the franchise. And halfway through that, I texted Rue and I was just like, I get it now. Wow. I cannot believe what you've done. This is extraordinary. You brought something out of the darkness into the light, and I couldn't be more proud. And then he asked me, it's somewhere in there we talked about me coming on and judging. And I said, yeah, I'd be honored, and that would be thrilling. Because I hadn't wanted to judge early on. I had been asked to judge early on during the series, but I had just come off of So You Think You Could Dance. And I just didn't want to be like a TV person anymore. I didn't want to be a guy behind a judge. I wanted to go back to being a director. So,
Well, you mentioned Disenchanted, and I just want to list some of these other films that you've directed in case people listening aren't aware that you directed Hairspray and The Pacifier and Rock of Ages and Bringing Down the House and A Walk to Remember and Cheaper by the Dozen 2. Like, these are big movies you're behind.
yeah, I'm proud. They did good. They did good. I mean, I have, they're all my children, and they're a part of my life. I don't think about them much. Not because I want to ignore my past or anything like that, but I'm just such a little worker bee that it's always like, just like, I'm not a particularly ambitious guy. I just really like to work. I think that's like the dancer in me.
Yeah.
It's like I'm just like I'm a grinder. Like, I like, get me out there and I just want to work. And because I love what I do, and I am fully aware how lucky I am to have the job that I have, and I am grateful for it every day.
Well, and even if you don't like thinking about them often, I am going to ask you to think about a few of them right now, if that's okay.
Okay, that's fine. I'll just, whatever I remember, I'll comment on.
You directed Zac Efron in Hairspray and Hilary Duff in Cheaper by the Dozen 2, when both of them were sort of at the cusp of moving from child stardom to being very famous and starting their adult careers. And I'm curious what you remember about them at that time.
Well, Zach was, I mean, this has been out there. Like, I at first didn't. Zach's first audition for Hairspray wasn't great,
Hmm.
and I went back to New Line, and I was like, I don't know. I mean, I get he's gonna be something. He doesn't feel right for me. And my sister, who was one of the producers of that movie, called me. She's like, "You fucking figure it out and make it work, because that kid's gonna be huge." And I was like, "Oh, damn, okay." Well, so we called Zach back in, and during his audition, and he would remember this, I I said, oh, I know what it is. Stop smiling. And he was like, well, I was like, while you're just stop smiling. I just need to feel a little bit of, even if it's fake mystery, I just want to feel a little bit of mystery around this character. And he did it again. And I said, like, can you make it a little sexier? And he did and then I was like, oh, no problem. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. And New Line was still not convinced, but the bigger star that New Line, excuse me, really wanted in the movie was Amanda Bynes, who had done a good audition, but I was still looking at other pennies. And they said, if you cast Amanda, we'll give you Zach.
Nice.
And so that's how they both ended up in the movie. And I guess I really haven't talked about this, but like I really loved working up with all those kids in the movie. I mean, they weren't children, but they were children to me. And Elijah, Zach, Brittany, Nikki, like while we were making the movie, everybody was so close and they were so game. And we also had this ungodly long, amazing rehearsal period where they came because I was choreographing it, I needed to choreograph the entire movie before we started shooting. So they had to learn the whole movie for 3 months before we even started shooting. And during that time, everybody spent so much time together. By the time that we were shooting, it was just a really tight knit family. And so I have an enormous amount of affection for those kids. And I'm really proud of uh, the work that they did on the movie. And Zach, right afterwards, we went on and I produced 17 again with my sister. And so I guess I was very much a part of that transition for him. But my memory is just that he was just a freaking angel.
Oh, that's nice to
He
hear.
was just a he was an angel. He was an angel who really was I could tell he was really just throughout it, he was just very uncomfortable being famous. He really also loved to work. He loved to do the stuff, but all of the hysteria around him was very uncomfortable for him.
Yeah. I mean, this is a movie that I rewatch more than I rewatch most movies. I think it's a perfect movie musical. And I have to ask, what was your reaction to seeing John Travolta as Edna for the first time and hearing that Baltimore accent?
The Well, I heard the accent before I saw Edna. And so it was very, very funny. And there was a lot of discussion about whether or not to have the Baltimore accent. And in fact, I asked John Waters, I was like, because John kept insisting when he was making another movie in Baltimore that was like a real Baltimorean accent. And and I know that the studio was particularly concerned. They were like, oh, is this going to be too much? And I called John Waters and I was like, "Is this like a real thing?" And he was like, "Yes, but it's so crazy that I never even put it in my movies. Like I like that's but it is for sure a real thing." And John really felt like it was part and parcel of his entry point into Edna. And so that's how the accent came. Then seeing Edna for the first time, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of discussion. I mean, a lot about what Edna was going to look like. And because John wanted to completely vanish inside of Edna, as opposed to kind of playing the joke of a man in drag. He was like, "No, I'm a woman. Like this is the period end of story. If I'm going to play Edna, I'm a woman." And but one of the important things for John was that there were signs that Edna had once been sexy and that Wilbur had fallen in love with a sexy woman. And through the years, she had just gotten really, really big. And that was part of her shame because if she had always been heavy, it wouldn't have been so shameful for her.
Mhm.
And that helped, some of the acting for John. So there was a lot of discussion about giving that character a waist. Like,
Mhm.
Divine's Edna isn't like belted. The Broadway musical Edna is schmatas until, Welcome to the 60s. And even then it's very drapey. And so John wanted stuff to be form fitting. And that was um that was just a lot of conversation. And, our costume designer was like, "Why are we doing this? This is crazy." And I was like, "I don't know. I think it's kind of an interesting idea." So that's how we arrived there. So when I did see Edna, fully formed Edna, I was like, "Well, here we go. Here we go."
I will say my entire family lives in Baltimore, and that accent that he did is exactly Baltimore.
Yeah. And like, nobody believe, because nobody else in the movie has it, and nobody in John Waters' movies has that. And so it's this like truly deeply Baltimorean thing. Am I even saying that right? Is Baltimorean a word? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. What do we call someone from Baltimore? Baltimoreans?
Oh, I would never.
Uh, um, it is really interesting what you were saying about Zach's first audition, because I know I've heard Brittany Snow talk about how she bombed her first audition and had to ask for a second try, which had me thinking, like,
Yeah.
I wonder do you remember who other people were who were like, circling those parts of Penny and Amber and Link?
I do. I'm just to protect the innocent, I'm not going to say, because like I'll still 20 years later run into them and they're like, I still, and I'm like, it was 20 years ago. Can we just let this go? Like,
Yeah. But I do want to talk about another movie star in a musical that you directed. We have to talk about Tom Cruise in Rock of Ages. What a left field thing for him to do at that point in his career and to commit to so fully.
it was, I'm not gonna lie, like that, working on that character with him and unleashing him and letting him do that, and just directing him in that performance was very special. That was a very special time for me. I think it was a very special time for Tom. Like, he really loved doing it. He, he learned to play the guitar. That's him playing,
Oh, wow.
uh, you know, we had this conversation where I said, "Look, every actor always brings something very uniquely themselves to anything that they do. It's very difficult for them to shake on sort of a piece of their essence, no matter what character that they're playing." And he was like, "Well, what are you talking about with me?" And I said, "Intense. When you're no matter what you do, it's intense. It's like you're intensely happy, you're intensely sad, you're intensely concerned, like that." And he's like, "Well, how do we channel that in this guy?" And I said, "I think this guy's just intensely lost. Like, he's just been doing this for a long time, and he wants some greater meaning, and he's been living in the bubble too long, and he's just lost." And he was like, "Okay, okay, how do you think?" I said, "Here's how we're gonna do it. I never want you to say a word until it comes out of you." And I was like, "Don't worry about, like, just, you know, using other people's cues to speak. I want you to, like, find the words, and because you're just so fucking lost." And he was like, "I love that." And so I mean, there were some days that was really brutal, because sometimes, like, character like Malin or Paul Giamatti or something, like, I would say something to him and he just wouldn't answer.
Oh, God.
Just and they would just be sitting with the cameras rolling, and we would just Tom would just be, like, staring at them, and, like, it was but that day that we shot Pour Some Sugar was one of the highlights of, like, just watching him commit to that in that incredible way was really, it was really exciting to watch. And he's such a good guy. I love him so much.
It's such a, I think intense is the perfect word. It's such an intense performance, which works so well for a character like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it was very, very different in the play. In the play, he's just sort of like, he comes in and knocks over tables, and he's very like, I'm entitled, and I'm gonna do all these things like that. But that worked great on stage. That would have never worked in a movie. And so we had to figure out what the movie version of that character was gonna be.
God. I mean, I had this crazy realization when I was, doing research for this and looking at your resume. you've kind of had this sort of like Forrest Gump-like tour through pop culture these last 30 years. I mean, this goes back to you started dancing with Paula Abdul and Janet Jackson to directing Tom Cruise and, working through Paul. Like, that's a crazy. Have you ever had that realization? Like, wow, I've really, sort of touched all these landmarks and icons throughout my work.
I think the peak moment of what the fuck is going on, what is my life, was producing the Oscars. When I produced the Oscars, I sat back and went like, "Wait, I've always thought I was just some joke." And I had always felt like a punchline. And now suddenly, like, Hollywood had given me the most important night of the year, and to not fuck up. And it played into a lot of my strengths because, like, I have a lot of P.T. Barnum in me. I like the idea of, like, that very kinetic live show thing. I'm from theater, so it made sense for me to do, and I'm a huge fan of the Oscars and all that. So, that's when things landed on me as being like, this has been a really wild ride. Um, but I don't like I said before, like, I don't spend a lot of time looking back. Um, it's just like jobs that I've done, like, and I've had the exciting experience of being in the rooms for some really crazy shit. I mean, I was the choreographer on I'm Your Baby Tonight. That was like my fourth music video that I choreographed. Like, and getting to spend all that time with Whitney, because that was like a 6-day shoot. And we were shooting around the clock for a couple days. And like, I got to really spend time with her and became friends with her during that. And like the fact that I got to have that experience and choreographing the time, and I did feels good with Tony Tron. And like, to then, like, that was my third music video. Like, so and it was like a huge hit. It's my work shit, but it's like those things amazing. And so I've gotten to be in and around a lot of truly extraordinary things, and I have had some incredible touch points. Um, but I think if I start to examine them, I'll just freak out. Like, I'll just start to cry, and I won't know what to do with any of that, you know?
That's fair and very healthy. Um, do you think I'm curious because you have, I mean, the names that we've talked about over this conversation are wild. Do you have a sense or have you discerned, I guess this is literally like the $1 million question, what separates someone who is just like merely talented from someone that has like the iconic, undeniable star quality that turns them into an icon?
Well, that's the problem. It's when they talk about the it factor and all of that, it's really a thing. And a lot of it has to do, especially when you're talking about film, it's about a relationship with the camera. There are some people who are maybe not the best actors in the world, but then when you turn a camera on them, something happens between them and a camera that is totally inexplicable. Like, I wish I could, if we could figure it out, by the way, we would, there would be a lot more stars, you know? And there is, you know, the way that I really always do look at the way that an actor listens. I remember when I cast Mandy Moore in A Walk to Remember, her and Shane, their test reading, their chemistry read, they were they did not nail the characters, but the way they interacted and listened to each other was undeniable. And the ease and naturalness with which she was able to talk to him when a camera was rolling, it was so special. Like, she was you never felt like she was sitting waiting to say her lines, or like trying to find any emotion within her, or like anything. Like, and I was like, I can help her with the character, but I cannot help her with this. The thing that she has is worth everything. So, That's just like an acting thing. I think when we're talking about the it's, I mean, look, you're probably aware that there's so much discussion about like the old movie stars, like what is a movie star now? The last set of movie stars is, well, I mean, we have a couple new ones in they talk about the Margot Robbies and Zendaya and people like that, but um and the list of males is fewer. It's actually smaller. But you're still always kind of weirdly talking about Tom Cruise, Will Smith, Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, Sandy Bullock, Nicole Kidman. I mean, people who are Reese, like these are people who are in their mid to late 40s to 70, and it's just a different world. It's just a different world, and people there, and also social media has obliterated the mystery around actors. So I don't know that we're ever going to have stars like that again. I hope we do, because it would be super cool, but it's like, we just have really, really popular actors now.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah.
you know
So I want to let you go soon, but I do have one last question I want to ask you, and I'm going to put you through the torture of having to think about the past again. Um, but I'm curious because I love your choreography so much. If there is something that you've choreographed that whenever it shows up or you see a clip or you think about it, you do let yourself feel the like, oh yeah, I nailed that one. Like this is something that I did that I will think forever was truly great.
Okay, let's back off the word great, but good. I'll let myself
Sure.
feel good about something. I mean, there's a number that is so wackadoodle from the movie Dudley Do Right. There's this weird, completely inappropriate cultural appropriation number that where the Indians in Canada are doing like a Lord of the Dance kind of a vibe thing for because they're making tourism money. That is crazy. That I actually thought was really funny. Um,
I was not expecting Dudley Do Right.
no, no, nobody would expect that. It's there was a weird number that I did in Tank Girl that I thought was actually really funny, but actually the long version of it is funnier, not the one that was actually in the theaters. Look, I think that there's a lot of stuff in Hairspray that I feel proud of. I think I still have some stuff that I would like to tweak and change and You Can't Stop the Beat, but mostly You Can't Stop the Beat is pretty good.
Yeah. Also, nicest kids in town is also fantastic.
Nicest Kids in Town, I think it might have been the first thing I choreographed in the movie. It was. I like that. Yeah, that's good. I like that. That's a good piece. The work that I did on the Oscars was good. I thought there because it was a huge well, there were two numbers. There was the opening number that Neil Patrick Harris did, but the choreography was good. And then the score the score award montage, dance montage was actually pretty good in that too. I like that. I still think, I mean, ironically, Run and Tell That is one of the best things I put on film, but I have to be honest with you, how that particular number came to be was Jamal Sims, who was one of my assistants. I had four assistants on that movie: Ann Fletcher, Jamal Sims, Joey Peasy, and Zach Woodley. And Jamal had gone home and talked to his parents or talked to his family who had been on a version of the Corny Collins show
Oh
in like North
wow.
Carolina or something like that. I'm getting states wrong and all of that, but so just know that like they remembered the dances of the day. And what happened was Jamal came back to rehearsal and said, "Okay, they taught me all the dances that everybody was doing on the shows." And so we learned all the actual dances that were done. And like we did like a weird little class of it. And then so Run and Tell That is actually a slap together of all of those dances.
Oh, that's so cool.
And we built the number that way, which like I love that number. I love that number. And so, but I owe a lot to Jamal's family for that.
That's such a cool backstory.
Yeah. And then but I mean, the whole Miss Teenage Hairspray contest from the very beginning, all of that, that was so much work. And even including the hairspray, the number Hairspray was never actually even supposed to be in the movie. It was supposed to be a background piece, but I had forgotten to choreograph it. I believe I choreographed that in 15 minutes and just like slapped it on because I turned to everybody and was like, oh, holy fuck, we forgot to choreograph this. There was also parts of Without Love that we had forgotten to choreograph, which I was like putting together on set and stuff like that. That was crazy. But yeah. So I like those pieces. I like those pieces.
Yeah, you should. They're great. Or excuse me, they're good.
They're good. They're good. I don't know, they're great, you know. Greatest for great people. Like I'm not being falsely human. Like again, I look at everything that I've done as sort of like an old prom picture. Like, sure, I remember that everybody was like, it was the greatest night, but I'm like, look at what I'm wearing. Why is my hair that way? Look at my skin. God damn it. Why didn't it like that? I'm really freaking hard on myself. So, you know, hopefully one of these days I'll be able to kind of look back with a little more kindness. But but it's been a great life and a great ride.
Yeah. And I joked before our conversation that I could talk to you for 3 hours, but I legitimately could talk to you for 3 hours about all these projects that you've done. But I do want to let you go and not keep your time. But thank you so much for chatting with me. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. I'm so pleased that you like Stop That Train, like, and that you you know it it feels like a prescriptive movie right now to me.
Yes. Yes.
If more stuff like this was getting made, I feel like there'd be and people's shoulders would drop a little bit more,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But I'm not saying it's important. I'm just saying it's actually what's important about it is how stupid it is.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. I mean, you could see in the enthusiasm for just the trailer that was released that people are needing something like this.
Yeah, it's cool. I love that.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Adam.
Thank you. Thank you for being so kind and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Adam. That was so much fun. Like I said, I could have talked to you for 3 hours, but I'm glad to give you your time back. But we want to hear from you. Let us know what you think. What's your favorite Adam Shankman movie? Do you have a favorite number in Hairspray? Let us know. We'd love to hear from you. As always, subscribe to us on YouTube at the Obsessed channel. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you like me, please subscribe to me at obsessed.substack.com. Thank you to our producer, Rachel Passer. And that's all. See you next time.